If I can have everybody's attention. Yes, that's a very nice necklace that Carissa has. I'm liking the necklace. It's very stylish. Okay, Spencer, can we kill the lights, please? Very good. Thank you so much. Listen, I was very impressed. I needed to sign into YouTube and post the video up to YouTube so that I can put it on the website in a little while. And I looked around and there was a whole lot of really productive stuff going on, which is what I'm hoping for. I will be here for extra help tomorrow morning, should you need it for either the quiz or for the relearn packet. You know, you can only control what you can control. And what I mean by that is, in the moment, you can correct things that you got wrong, you can work on a relearn packet so that you can straighten things out for the future. Sometimes everyone has a tendency to get a little ahead of themselves and to think bad thoughts and negative thoughts and bad things walk into your mind. I'm willing to bet when you went over the quiz, you looked at it like, I can't believe I did that. Anybody feel that way at any point in time with any of the questions you got wrong? Yeah, that's pretty typical. And if you didn't feel that way, then you looked at the questions and you were like, oh, that's it? Oh. It's okay. You just need to, it's got to be important to you every single day to look at your work and to say, where am I going right? Where am I going wrong? How do I straighten this stuff out? As soon as you do that, you're in great shape, okay? Now, now we start talking about two-step equations. It's a radical shift and multi-step's coming up real soon. It's a radical shift in what we've been covering so far this year. So far this year, everything has been laying groundwork. And in some ways, we're laying groundwork with equations, but we are going to kick them up a notch compared to what you're used to doing from last year. Today is not a difficult day, but over the next week or so, we will be involved with much more difficult equations. And what we're really trying to do here is make sure that you perceive equations correctly. Okay? So, all right. So here is today's do it, and here are the three questions. I'm going to go over these three questions, and then I'm going to formalize how we do this. I'm going to do the three questions pretty quickly, okay? The first thing I always look for is whatever's being added or subtracted in the basic two-step like this. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides. 3x is equal to 9. And then I divide by 3, die, and I get x is equal to 3. Now, I just went over that very quickly, and the intent here is that most of you know how to do this. So I'm not going to go slow at all. Next is, again, number one is very traditional. I think, having looked at your papers, that everybody would be fine with number one. But letter B, I'm sorry. Letter B gets things a little bit differently. What do you notice is the difference between letter A and letter B? Alejandro?
X is on the left.
Yeah, on A, the variable, the unknown, is on the left, and in B, the variable or the unknown is on the right. So, it doesn't change anything with how I approach the problem. But some people see the variable on the right and they twitch. They can't handle it. All right, it's the same thing. You just ask what's happening to the variable, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later, and we do opposites. That says +7, so we do -7. On the left side of that equal sign, because it's as if there's a wall right down the middle of the equal sign, I get -14, and on the right side I get equals 2x. Divide by 2, die, x is -7. Okay? And then number 3 is very tricky. I'm willing to bet some of you got number 3 wrong. Before that, you think you got it?
Yeah.
What do you got?
X equals -2.
Nicely done. What you need to realize to get this one right, to get this question right, it's very important that you realize something. Mr. Lindquist and Mrs. Lindquist, what's the difference? Everybody.
Mr. Female.
Male and female. by the phrase Mr. Lindquist and the phrase Mrs. Lindquist, how can you tell which one is which? Anthony?
Mr. or Mrs.
Right, which is located in front, okay? So Lindquist, we understand, is a particular family, and if you were talking about the male or the female, you look in front. If it says Mr., it's male. If it says Mrs., it's female. Well, it's like that with numbers. In the family of numbers, there are two types. There's positive and there's negative. And you need to peek in front to see which kind that we're talking about. So this is not 5x. Please look. This is not 5x. This is negative 5x. What kind of 3 is this?
Positive.
Positive. A lot of people will think that this minus is somehow connected to the 3. It has nothing to do with the 3. Absolutely nothing. This 3 is positive because in front of the 3 there's no sign, which means it's positive. So minus 3, minus 3. Die. I didn't touch this, so it's negative 5x. 13 minus 3 is 10. Again, let me emphasize this. This 5x is negative because you peek in front to see what it is. In this case, the 5x is negative. I need to then divide by negative 5, not by positive 5. That's a 10 there, by the way. Die, x is negative 2. Don't ask me why this is so strange. The blues, reds, and greens don't look like they did before. I somehow got kicked off of YouTube. This has just been a very strange day for the computer. Things are working very weird.
Why did you get kicked off of YouTube?
I don't know, but I had to go change my password. Do you think I remember passwords for YouTube? Who remembers passwords for YouTube?
Wouldn't have.
I remember mine.
You have to if you have a channel.
Dude, YouTube Heroes demonetized him.
Oh,
man.
You demonetized me? Does that mean I'm broke?
No, YouTube Heroes did it.
Who's YouTube? Hero?
YouTube Heroes, oh my god, I hate them so much.
I don't know.
what is
yeah.
that?
YouTube
Okay.
Heroes, they
YouTube.
report
It was
people
some guy.
because they like curse or something.
Well, I didn't curse.
Inappropriate.
All right, so now, very quick story. I have to limit myself to 7 minutes. And then we will keep going on this. The reason I can even tell the story is because you are exceptionally bright young people, right? Right? You're exceptionally bright. Are we all good on that?
Sure.
And you would like to know something really cool. Anybody into horror stories here? Okay. So, let me tell you a little bit about the history of the South Ocean Middle School.
Did you see it?
Yeah, make Sydney cry.
Cindy, I'm here to protect you. You're going to be okay.
Is it-
Now, da-da-da, math man to the rescue. Now, here's the deal. Does anybody here have parents or grandparents who've been in the Patcho Medford community for a very long time? They will know what I'm talking about. They will very much know what I'm talking
My
about.
grandparents have been here.
All right, listen, I don't want to sound like I don't care about what you're saying, but I have 7 minutes and I could take 30 to do the story. Okay, so many, many years ago, South Ocean used to be the high school. By the way, I don't know if you know, they found this like hidden room in South Ocean over the summer.
Oh yeah, in the band room.
Yes,
So cool.
very much so. So there's these freaky things that are attached to, in some way, shape, or form, this building. So, many years ago, back in the 60s, early 60s to mid 60s, there was a guy who went to school here by the name of Jeffrey McDonald. And, no, there really was his name.
And Ron.
And Jeffrey McDonald was the All-American boy. He was the starting quarterback on the football team. He was the starting point guard on the basketball team.
He was a valedictorian.
He was the valedictorian. He was the starting shortstop and pitcher on the baseball team. And not only was he an amazing athlete and very, very bright because he was valedictorian, but he married his high school sweetheart named Colette, who was the head cheerleader. So this was the all-American story right now. It just doesn't get any better than this. Now,
It gets worse.
so, by the way, does anybody know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
You have a clue where I'm going with this?
Right.
Yeah, because
All right,
Davis told me.
yeah. Oh, they told you from the other day. Okay. So, Jeffrey McDonald he goes to school here. He's the All-American boy. Everybody loves him. And he's really, really bright. So, he goes to Princeton University. As he goes to Princeton University, he graduates in 4 years, and then he goes to medical school. He graduates medical school in 4 years. And when he gets out of medical school, rather than become a doctor, he joins the Green Berets, which is like a Navy SEAL. It's the Army version of a Navy SEAL. And the thing of it is that this is the era of the late 1960s, early 1970s. This is when hippies, who now control Hamilton. Some of them, yes, without a doubt.
Someone controls us.
Without a doubt. The same people who are rioting on college campuses, it's no coincidence that there are riots going on here. But I'm not going anywhere near that.
Obama was a hippie.
So, and no, he was in Hawaii. So
Obama's
anyway,
a lizard.
so what we have here is we have a very messed up time in the history of America. It was even worse than it is now, if you can imagine that.
Wow.
And there was a lot of violent protests going on all over the country. Fix your hood. And with these violent protests came these very, very bad things. So within this era, time setting and everything else, there was Jeffrey McDonald. And he was stationed in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And down in North Carolina, one night, there was a horrific accident at his house. Remember, he went to school here. In fact, he may have been in this very classroom. Now, he calls the police. He said there's been a break-in. He said that there were 4 armed hippie intruders who came into his house. That's exactly what he said. And he said there was a life and death fight in his living room between him and the people who broke into his home. They were chanting acid is groovy and all these other drug-related things. And these people then went in and butchered his family.
Uh-oh.
His
Wait,
wife.
wasn't he fighting them?
That's what he said. He said he was fighting them. He said that they knocked him unconscious, and that his wife was. When I say butchered, I am not overusing the term.
I don't-
Wait,
Hold
they
on,
didn't
hold
kill
on,
him?
hold on. Shh. I have 7 minutes.
That's illogical.
The wife was. They were. The wife. There was a wife. There was like a 4-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old and 2-year-old daughter.
What?
And they were stabbed like over 30 times.
Oh,
It
no.
was.
That's a big
It
number.
was horrific. It was horrible. It was terrible, and it was on the front page of every paper in the country.
Extreme.
So the police investigate, and Spencer just said something very logical. He said the situation is illogical. How come they butchered the rest of the family, but they didn't butcher him? Now, he did have some stab wounds on him, but every stab wound was in a non-vital place. And if you're a doctor, would you know how to stab yourself in a non-vital place?
Yep.
This is what the thinking was. So the police arrived at the conclusion that Jeffrey McDonald slaughtered his family.
Mhm.
So, he had a trial, and I'll give you the very short, quick version of this. He had a trial, and when he had, this trial was held in military court, because the crime happened on Fort Bragg, which is a military facility. And when you see NCIS or any of these shows, the military has its own way of doing things that does not necessarily go into the public sector. So the military claims that the police botched the investigation. They said he was really innocent. And his father-in-law, this guy named Fred Kassab, they used to live, by the way, right down off of Row over there. Fred Kassab comes in and he says, listen, in the trial, they said that his testimony was very moving, and it's why they declared him not guilty. Well, one of the big reasons, that and what they thought was ineffective police work. He said that he has known Jeffrey McDonald since he was a little boy who would ride a tricycle in the street. He said he's known him his whole life, and while he's not a perfect person, he would never do something like this. He said he was a doctor, he saved lives, he didn't take lives. He can never do something like this. He was 100% behind the fact that his son didn't do it. So then or son-in-law, then Jeffrey McDonald goes on to all the talk shows. Like nowadays we have Oprah, we have Dr. Phil, we have Ellen and all these shows. Back then they had other shows very similar. And he starts going on all of these shows. And the father-in-law starts to notice that every time he goes on one of these shows, his story changed a little bit. And then he noticed that he was almost smiling on the shows, and that he was enjoying the attention. And Colette's father, Fred, he kept saying to himself, listen, if your wife and family got butchered, how could you smile? How could you go on these shows? Shouldn't you be keeping it really low key and staying out of the public light? It should hurt you, yet you're enjoying all the attention. That was his perception of it. So at that point in time, Fred Kassab wrote the military and said, I want a copy of all the transcripts from the trial. So he just a stack of papers, and he starts going through the papers, and he sees so many discrepancies and so many times when he thinks his son-in-law is lying, and then he's torn up inside because he's saying, wait a minute, I testified for this guy. I swore he didn't do it. So he gets on a plane, he flies to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. They go up to the house. The house still has the police tape on it. He walks through the front door, and he's walking around the house. And he's looking, and, you know, I don't know, maybe he's staring at the blood stains, whatever's going through his mind. And he's so upset, and he's so frustrated. I mean, he's lost his daughter, he's lost his granddaughters, he's lost all of these different things. And he's saying to himself, you know, what happened? What went wrong? So he's in the living room, and he's walking around with his life and death struggle supposedly took place between this Green Beret and 4 drugged out hippies. And he's walking around, and he gets so mad, he picks his foot up. This is such a female move. He picks his foot up, and he stomps his foot.
Triggered.
Now, when he did that, it was the little girl's birthday. And there was a row of cards on a mantle.
Wait, what
And every
little
one
girl?
of the cards fell down.
What little girl?
The 2-year-old that died.
Oh, okay.
All the cards fell down. And he said he lied. How in the world could there be a life and death struggle between 4 hippies, one of which he said was like 6'6", 280, and a man trained to kill with his bare hands? And a brawl takes place in the living room. And those cards stand up, but I stomp my foot, and the cards fall down. So they reopen the case. This time they try it in civilian court. He's found guilty, and he has spent the rest of his life in jail.
Wait, isn't that illegal? Isn't it double jeopardy?
No, because one was military and one was civilian. You couldn't do 2 in a civilian.
Is he still alive?
So, you know, I wanna say he's alive, but I think I might have read something about him dying, so I really don't know for sure.
Wait, what were the
Now,
motives?
this was a book and a movie. The name of the book was Fatal Vision. It's one of 2 books I've ever read in my life that scared me. And the reason it scared me is it was Patcho, and I grew up in Blue Point. So, that was one, and there was a movie made based on it as well, so,
What was it called?
Fatal Vision.
Oh.
That's not
And
really
by the way,
scary.
just very quickly, the reason they said that, they thought he did it, or at least the author of the book, when someone is a young doctor, they work enormous hours, up to 20 hours a day, 5, 6, 7 days a week. And you guys know what meth is?
Yep.
All right, meth is really called methamphetamine. And the theory is that he had taken so many amphetamines to stay awake that he basically lost it, just like a meth addict can go crazy and do things that they would never do in their right mind. They think that the amphetamines, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said meth. The amphetamines built up in his system to the point where he just snapped. And the theory is that the one daughter went to bed, and he went nuts on the daughter, hurt her, and then tried to cover up the crime. So that's the working theory behind it. Now, the reason I bring all of that up is because solving an equation is like solving a crime. You've got to go to the scene of the crime. Have you ever seen when like there's a shooting or a murder, and they shoot like lasers through where the body was and the bullet trajectories, and they try to find where the shooter must have been and everything else?
ABC News does that.
Yeah, well, there's lots of things who do. You know, CSI was a show that was all based on recreating the crime. And there's 3 things that let us recreate the crime in an equation. The first thing you're always going to ask yourself is what's happening to the variable, okay? With crimes, you ask for who had means, motive, and opportunity. With this, we ask what's happening to the variable. Then you always need to do the inverse or the opposite operation. Number 2 on the quiz, you had to do something squared. What's the opposite of squaring, everybody? Square rooting. Likewise, the opposite of multiplying is dividing, the inverse of adding and subtracting, and so on. And then, this is the key. You have to make sure you do the same thing to both sides. And then I capitalize it. You always do the same thing to both sides. If you do not do the same thing to both sides, you're in a world of hurt. Not much good comes from it. Okay, so, how do I apply that to these equations? Now again, this is the first one, which is very simple. What I always look for, I'm going to actually reverse the order of operations when I solve an equation. The last thing I see here is a -4, so I do the opposite, and I do a +4. That's right. So when I said before that you always do the same thing to both sides, it's important we realize both sides of what? Both sides of the equal sign, okay? It's as if there's a wall, and whatever I do on one side of the wall, I have to do on the other side of the wall. So in this case, I added 4 to both sides of the wall. Die. On the one side of the wall, the only thing I have left is a 3x. On the other side, it says 8 plus 4, which is 12. Now, again, what's happening to the variable? It's being multiplied by 3. What's the opposite of multiplying by 3? Everybody? Dividing by 3. So I divide by 3, die. God bless. X is 4. Now, I feel that more than likely you're comfortable with everything I just did. The next two questions are based on the idea that if I change up the appearance a little bit, it often gives kids a hard time. So, bless you. On the next one, we move the 2x to the right side. Do it. Give you about less than 30 seconds to get it done. Okay, so even though the x is on the right side, it shouldn't bother us. It shouldn't make us feel uncomfortable. We're still asking what's happening to the variable. When I say what's happening to the variable, do I say what's happening to the variable on the left side?
No.
No, I just say what's happening to the variable. So your job is to look at the equation and find the variable. Bingo! There it is. There's the x. Now, there's two things happening to the x. I'm being multiplied by 2, and it's adding 17. I always start with the opposite of the order of operations, so I begin with the plus 17. What is the inverse or opposite operation? Everybody?
Yes.
What is it?
Yes.
What is it?
Dividing. Subtracting. Subtracting.
That says plus 17. You?
Subtract.
17. It has to be the same number, right? Wouldn't it be any good to subtract 10? Negative 7 and negative 17 is negative 24. Equals 2x. Then I divide by 2. Die. Negative 24 divided by 2 is negative 12. Okay? Show of hands, how many people got that right? Virtually the entire room. Okay. Now let's take a look at this one. Same idea, but I need you to remember what we spoke about before with the positives and the negatives being in front of the numbers. Go ahead, finish this last one. I've noticed most people are already done, so I'll give you a brief amount of time.
This will link this is today, isn't it?
No idea.
Today's a big day.
Okay, so is this 8 positive or negative? Positive, so I do minus 8. Die. 12 and negative 8 make 4 equals. Now, what kind of 4x is this? Negative. You guys remember Steve Irwin, Crocodile Hunter?
Oh,
He
I
used to
loved
pick up a
him.
snake, right? And he'd hold it, and the thing would be hissing, and he'd go like,
Yeah.
danger, danger, danger. This is the second most deadly snake in the whole world.
Didn't he get killed?
Yeah, one little bite from this beauty, you're a goner. Right? You've seen that guy. Well, this is the second most deadly type of math problem in the whole world. One little bite from this beauty, you're a goner. See, when this 4x is negative, you can't forget that negative sign. Kids do it all the time. Die, x is negative 1.
What does that have to do with property?
Oh, no, it's the danger.
Oh, okay.
Now, last but not least, letter G. Like, hey, last but not least, letter G, like on the quiz. We have to remember to distribute. When I distribute, what do I get?
12n minus 15.
12n minus 15. Good. What's the next one when I distribute?
Negative
Negative 5x
Minus 20.
minus 20. Very good. Okay. So, you know where we are with this. We did a basic day of equations today. We had some on the quiz. We're going to keep pushing forward, getting it all done. Remember, look for what's happening to the variable. Do the same thing to both sides. Always inverses or opposites.
Oh no.
And remember your danger. That's right. You got that accent down. It's pretty good when an Italian can do an Australian accent. Hey, you keep wearing that shirt with pride, buddy.
Pull yourself together, Lena.
It's funny.
Kristen, can you get the jacket?
One second. I just need to find my little button to turn this off. Close. There we go.